Ulta, ticker symbol ULTA. Is that correct?
That is correct. So just for a little bit of perspective, before we look at the squiggly lines, and I had to chuckle before I was looking at your charts,
Oh,
AJ, in terms of I remember one of my, and this, I'm going off a tangent here, so excuse me just for 1 second, but one of my support staff a few years ago, he he showed me a screen share of some support call he had with a client, and the client had literally, like, I don't know, probably about half a dozen or maybe a dozen indicators on his chart. And somewhere at the very top, what looked more like an actual, like, I don't know, like a menu, you saw one little squiggly line. That was the price. So, and of course, you and I know it really needs to be the other way around.
yeah. Yes. It has to be limited and focused.
Exactly. So
I love your software package, by the way. The one that you're demonstrating right here. I
perfect.
actually got it.
I will show.
Sorry, go ahead. No, I was going
will
to say
show
I
you
got
that.
a sneak peek at that software package when you and I were together in Las Vegas a couple of months ago. So
Okay.
I love that you're demonstrating it right now.
Okay, perfect. Yeah, I think this is actually different, but I mean that's a great tool as well. So maybe just quickly a setup. So for those people that can kind of get their head around that the consumer spending is slowing, which is factual at this point. There's really very little argument there. Question is how much. You look at something like Ulta Beauty. Like, I don't know if you've ever been to one of those stores, but there's one right next to the wine store. That's why I know it exists. And so I've gone into that thing, and I made the big mistake of telling my wife that it exists. And then anyway, so I went in there, and this was during the pandemic, and I need to understand what it is. And so I've been kind of watching this. It's a pretty good stock to measure consumer sentiment and behavior and pockets. So Ulta Beauty, it's cosmetics. For those people who don't know, should be in the name. Big pandemic name to some extent. It was kind of choppy, and then as everyone started having to go back to work and put on makeup for the first time in 2 years, so they don't look like zombies anymore. They all rushed to the cosmetic store. Now, of course, that story has run its course, and Ulta is essentially now off about 30% from the highs in May. And it's basically staring over a cliff. Now, this is now we're getting more into the technicals, right? The near-term stuff. So as far as I'm concerned, AJ, I mean, I think just to the trained eye, this does not look like something that's about to rip roar higher unless there's some amazing good news. I would imagine you, all else being equal, probably agree.
Yes.
So if we can get our head around this, the next stop to me is probably closer to somewhere around, 370 and which is, historically speaking, there's a lot of price action down there. So, that's
exactly
kind of it.
Right.
That's kind of in a nutshell how I look at it. And you can look at it another way too. If you look at the consumer spending, I mean, we could pull up Starbucks, and I'll show you the indicator that gives us these signals in a minute, but you can look at Starbucks too. And, again, same. So let's take a step back. I don't know about you, AJ, but if I were to lose my job, I'm probably not going to drink more $7 lattes. I'm probably going to drink a few less.
Yeah, I'll go to McDonald's and get the mud. The stuff that like mud.
Filtered mud, exactly. So you switch to that. And fun fact, and not to move away too different from the other stock, but Starbucks does have for those people that like to draw charts, lines, and annotate things. This more or less is a head and shoulders pattern. We saw it before. Now, again, I'm a really, really big believer, having worked on Wall Street for just a little bit too long. You can't just use a chart. You have got to put perspective around it and have a story. So that's why I'm telling you a story about Ulta and Starbucks. Now, what's giving us the signal? Well, one of the things that I like to use, and we'll talk about this next week, AJ, is I like to know when there is computer algorithms coming into the market. Now, I'm here to tell you it's a difficult thing to do, and it will never be able to tell when all or even more than maybe 30% or 20% of algorithms come in, or even less than that. But if we can tell some, we've got a really good chance of going with the flow. And so one of the signals we got after doing all this analysis that we saw some pretty big sell programs come back into this in mid-August. This is the algorithm that we're going to talk about next week, if that's okay with you, AJ, and how we can kind of, instead of fighting the algos, right? So like, who are you and I to fight, skyscrapers full of smart algorithm towers in New York, why not go with the flow and kind of, see if we can go on their backs. And so we saw sell signals come into the market very clearly there on the 17th of August, and that continues to work out. There has not been any let up. Those are pretty persistent sellers in the market, and so Ulta, I think it's a short.
Mm-hmm.
And so, just a quick follow up to that, because AJ, we get a number of tickers and symbols that hit the help desk all week, and so usually at this point, AJ would break down the options approach to this down pattern. And so, AJ, if looking at this chart, what would you like? How would you be guiding our and the training trainer members to get into a position to the downside here?
Well, I love the idea of either doing a short position on the stock itself or buying some back month, deep in the money, far out in time put options. And now you're set up for that down move. And what's really neat is I agree with Serge. I see that level of support around 370, 380. You can calculate that into your trade plan. And if you wanted to turn that into a position where we could sell some front month near term at the money put options every expiration and create some income off of that, that's great. Now, if it dips down lower than that, and I would, put a cap on that, but I would put a threshold, I don't know, 360, 355, then don't worry about selling premium. Now we're going to just look for an exit on that initial position because you basically got that down move, and that's going to far surpass any combination of income. So I love this position on Ulta. So, if you can afford it, if you have the risk appetite to take it into your portfolio, that would be a good thing to do. It's pricey.